So in our last lecture, we learned that humans are causing all kinds of negative impacts on the lithosphere. For the rest of the lecture, we're going to learn about how humans are coming up with innovative ways to lessen these impacts. So we're going to call this last section conservation. One of the most awesome things that we did, or that we learned about, was agroecology. Agroecology is basically treating your farm more like an ecosystem. One of the big things about ecosystems is that they are circular, or they function in a circular way. Actually, most all nature does. That makes it self-sustainable. You don't need to add any products, or you don't need to add as many products. And the farm in general is just healthier. We learned that there are 4 kind of aspects or areas of agroecology efficiency. So trying to make decrease waste, self-sustaining. So we want the system to stand on its own. Diversity, generally when we increase the biodiversity of a system, we learn this in our biosphere unit, but when we increase biodiversity, the health is also increased, which is great. And then it also helps to build resilience to issues like flooding or droughts or other storms like hurricanes, or even maybe disease within our crops. Our example here was a case study of one of the examples that comes to mind is if you watched Biggest Little Farm with us, you saw that they had a snail problem on some of their citrus trees. Actually, a lot of their citrus trees, and their first solution was to just pull the snails off. They didn't use pesticides or herbicides because they were an organic farm. So they had to send workers out there to pick the snails off. But then those snails got so large in number that it looked more like a giant wasp nest on the tree instead of just a few snails. So they had to come up with a new solution. The solution that they came up with was setting the ducks into the orchard and actually letting the ducks eat the snails off of the trees. Not only was that good because it was decreasing the pests, but as the ducks moved along and ate the snails, they also pooped and peed in the fields, which was a natural fertilizer. So not only did they solve a problem, they actually benefited the system as well overall. That whole video, the whole documentary that we watched was all about agroecology. So how do you make this giant farm more sustainable or act more like an ecosystem? One of the other things that is big with agroecology is doing multiculture. So biodiversity is similar to multiculture. We learned that in traditional farming, we do monoculture. We grow one crop at a time. Multiculture is a lot better. It helps to prevent diseases and increase biodiversity and health of the overall system. In this case, our system is the farm, so why wouldn't we want our farm to be healthy? Moving on, though, when we look at our conservation efforts for ecology, we also have to look at soil conservation. So we're going to write soil conservation right here. Or how to preserve our soil, because our soil is a natural resource, believe it or not, and it's one that definitely needs our help. One of the first things we learned to help preserve the soil is contour plowing, or plowing in a way that decreases erosion. This is good. It doesn't return nutrients to the soil, but it helps to make sure that the wind and water that is going over and affecting our land doesn't take with it our valuable topsoil. The second soil conservation method we learned is called strip farming. This is where we plant different crops in each row or given area. This helps to increase the biodiversity of our farm, making it function more like an ecosystem. But not only that, it helps to preserve the nutrients of the soil, because not every crop takes a lot of nutrients out of the soil. Some are less nutrient needy, I guess. Like we do crop rotation. Strip farming is a little bit like crop rotation, only in the sense that it helps to return the nutrients to the soil, because each different plant is going to use a different amount of the nutrients. If you rotate those again each year, the soil is going to be better. It's going to have more nutrients. We also learned terracing. That's when we cut strips or cut chunks out of steep slopes and plant crops there. The ancient, I do not remember if it's Inca or Maya, I think it's Maya, actually did this first, because they lived in I don't know anymore, one of the two. They lived in a mountainous region, and so a lot of their crops couldn't be grown on the side of a mountain, if you can imagine, so they would cut strips. So instead of our side of our mountain looking like this, they would cut chunks out of the mountain so it looked more like a stair step. And at each of these stair steps, they would plant some plants. Our fourth way to preserve the soil is to plant a cover crop. Many farmers do this, whether they are traditional farmers or regular farmers. This is a crop planted after harvest, and its main job is to hold the soil down. Sometimes the cover crop can be harvested for profit, but a lot of the times it's things like rye, alfalfa, and clover, and those can't really be harvested that much. If you do, you're not going to make that much of a profit off of it. And then number 5 is organic farming, which is doesn't use, so no pesticides, no herbicides. And that is going to help with the pollution that we see as a result of many of our traditional farming methods. We learned about fossil fuels and about their distinct type of formation. Remember, coal, the solid form of our fossil fuel, is formed from once living terrestrial things from millions and millions of years ago. And our oil and natural gas is formed from once dead marine organisms from millions and millions of years ago, like 300 million years ago. They all they're carbon-based. That's why they release carbon dioxide when they combust into the atmosphere. We did talk about mining a little bit. One of the issues with mining, we'll write just a little bit of the mining down. I guess I forgot to talk about that. So mining, we can mine for minerals, we can mine for oil, but it's basically digging in the ground. We can do a surface mine, which kind of looks like this. Kind of like our rock quarries. So they dig a hole, like this is a hole, this is land. They dig out like that to try and find whatever it is they're looking for, or we can do underground mines. So that looks more like mining a shaft in the side of a mountain. Something like that. This would be a dead end. I haven't made it yet. It's a mountain. Each of these has an issue. We can get a lot of landslides. One is habitat destruction for whatever organisms lived in and on the mountain or area that they're mining. Two, it can cause geological hazards like landslides because it's loosening the soil, mudslides, creeps, flows, any of those that we talked about. It can leave a lot of waste in terms of like actual trash found in here, or the carbon dioxide that's used to make the machines go that dig that hole. They're pollution heavy usually. And it just generally disrupts the surface of the earth. How do we reduce this destruction? We do this by reclaiming, which means after we mine the land, we put it back to the conditions that it was before we started mining it. So we cover up the hole, we plant more trees right there, and we leave the area. Another way to decrease mining, so this is not something generally you can do, this would be the mining company. One way you can reduce the destructive nature of mining is to recycle and reuse more. So don't create as much of a need for those materials. And you can support legislative work that stiffens or increases fines for not reclaiming the land. We already talked about fossil fuels. And we already talked about alternative energy. And that's pretty much all we studied so far in this unit. So this is the last bit of that lecture. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a great day. This is just a reminder that your computers are due back tomorrow to your homeroom teacher if you've checked them out. Computer and charger, please, so that we can start testing on Monday. Monday you will take your civics exam. Tuesday you will take an ELA exam. Thursday you will take a math exam, and Friday you will take a science exam. Have a great day. If you have questions, email me.